I cannot tell you how excited we are to welcome choreographer and dancer and artistic director Dean Lee to the show Just Dance. Dean, my goodness, you have worked with everybody, and we're going to talk about all that in a second. But I do want to mention you've worked with Shania Twain, you've worked with Kylie Minogue, you've worked with the Pussycat Dolls, Eve, and of course Janet Jackson. We're super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
So, T, where would you like to start?
Where I always start. Um, so for everyone who doesn't know, Dean and I are actually meeting for the first time, which is very, very cool. It's a little surreal to think so many generations apart we are, and yet we have this common thread, which is very cool. I would like for the fans that don't know you and for our followers that aren't familiar with your work is I always like to know where people started. Like where, first of all, where are you from and what was that kind of first thing that made you go, I think I want to do this. I actually want to dance or give it a shot. And then kind of just talk to us about how you navigated that.
Well, firstly, I'm from London, born and raised in London. I'm a city boy through and through. And I think there was two things that were really the catalyst for me wanting to dance. And I spoke on this a few times previously in other interviews, but like you say, just for the people that don't know, I think there was it was Michael Jackson's Thriller video, and I was so petrified of the music video. I was so scared I would leave the room. But I would always come back into the room whenever that bass line came in for the dance break. Like that just did something to my insides, and I just was mesmerized by this dance break. And that was, I think, probably my very earliest memory of my connection to music and dance. But I think, well, not I think, I know the thing that made me go, that's what I want to do was Janet Jackson's Together Again music video. I remember when that came on the music channels, I remember scouring like every music channel to watch it again and again and again, like on repeat. It was just like her smile, her beauty, her red hair, like the dancers, the choreography, like everything about it just made me feel something I'd never felt before. And that was really the rabbit hole of realizing that there was this connection for me with Janet and her music. And, the more I discovered her, the more I just fell in love with what she was as an artist. And it was actually the first piece of music I ever went and bought with my own money. It was 99p. It was it was on a cassette tape, not even in a plastic case, like a cardboard sleeve. Like, yeah, and I remember going over to the shopping mall to buy it, and just I had this tiny little stereo, and I would just play that song on repeat, or repeat, or repeat. So that really was the moment I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a dancer. And I think in that moment, I was so young, I was so naive. I was like, I want to do it for Janet. But then, you go to dance college, you realize how far away that is. So you never think it's going to happen, but the world works in a very incredible way. But that was it. That music video and that song was the catalyst for wanting to be a dancer.
Were you actively dancing at that time? Like, did you consider yourself a dancer or were you taking classes in that moment?
Not at all. I was at school. I had a very, very hard time at school. I was very, very severely bullied. I was out of school for a really long time. And every time I was at school, I was a daydreamer. I couldn't focus. I wasn't academic like that.
Mhm.
I still turned up and went every day and went to all my lessons, but I just would sit there and just daydream of music and dancing and being on stage. And it was an escapism, I suppose. And it wasn't until about 13, 14 that I then discovered there was like a local theatre school close to where I lived.
Mhm.
And kind of went there and just started doing one class a week. It was an all boys dance class, like 3 hours on a Thursday, and it cost like £2.50 or something crazy like that. And that was it. And I went there, and I just remember all these guys. They'd been there for so long, and they were so cool, like just so great. And then eventually, I decided to go into tap and modern and, a few little things like that.
Right.
But didn't really properly get into it until about 13, 14. Yeah.
That's so cool because I remember I grew up in the studio, so I've been dancing since I was like 2, but there's still, so for me, I was too young to kind of, I think, put together like kind of what a connection to music I had, right? Because we just kind of just when you have that, you just take it for granted. Like my whole house was musical. We had my brother was a musician, so we had all kinds of musical instruments in the house, and I was the youngest of 3, so I'm kind of like popping from one room to the next and listening to disco in my sister's room, listening to Elton John in my brother's room, and listening to Mexican music. My mom's putting on the radio every Sunday morning. Um, but I find that even still, it took me a long time, I think, to blossom into really understanding dance and understanding the connection it had with me. Because I think, again, I would do it every year. We would learn our routine, and all our staging was front row, back row, and we would change. And our big thing was the county fair every year. We were going to perform, we got our costumes, and that's like what I lived for. And then I got into high school and found like a dance team where it was more competitive dance. And it really kind of made me go, what, like there was just something out. And this was before dance was even thought of as a career or more than a hobby. But for me, even just watching my dance blossom at that moment, going, oh, I can strive for at that time, of course, you were striving to be first place. So you were striving for more, difficulty with technique or execution and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and really, so that was like kind of one step, but then it didn't really blossom until I got my first dance job, which was of all things a break. I couldn't break dance, but it was called, it was a video called Break Dance USA, but I was one of the jazz dancers with all the break dancers. I think that's how I met Terry Bixler, like way before Janet. Um, but being around probably, which is very similar to you being in that class with, every Tuesday or Thursday with the boys, was like, I was surrounded by dancers that I'd never seen before. I hadn't seen break dancing before. I hadn't seen, I was in a small town. There wasn't a lot of competition. So I hadn't seen a lot of dancers that I thought were that much better than me. I knew that they were technically were. So my eyes kind of went, whoa, that bar just got raised so much higher. But it was something that I was willing to be out of breath. I was willing to not eat. I was willing to like have blisters on my feet because you're not even thinking about that. You're just like, I got to get that move. I got to get that step. What are they doing? What is it called? So I think it's really cool because I think it's, everyone has that same experience in different ways. So it's kind of neat to see, and to see that you didn't grow up being a dancer, but you went in search of it because it was just like, it seemed like it was something that resonated in your heart going like, I need to go over here. Like, this is what's calling me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think it's that thing of the older that I've got and the more experience you gain and, you grow as a person in life and you just kind of go, wow, the gift of dance is so real and it is something that is instilled in us. It is a gift that we are given. And you don't fully realize that straight away. You just know that there's something you can do that you really love and it makes you feel a certain way. But
Mhm.
I think especially with choreographing, you have an opportunity to impact people, whether that be the dancers you're creating on and how you make them feel, or whether it's the audience that are watching and your steps can make them feel something. That's on the choreography aspects. But I think as a dancer, um, I always say dance is therapy. We have such a unique opportunity to take all the things we've been through in life and really channel it into this gift that we've been given. And I
Mhm.
think just to backtrack and go back to when I was younger, you don't know that, you don't realize that straight away, but you
Right.
said it perfectly. And I think going into that dance class with all those guys and um, not to make it about race, nothing like that, but I was like the only white boy in this dance class. Like it was, so my point is, all these black guys are there and they got so much rhythm and, funk. And it's just like, I just remember walking into the room, just being like, wow, like this is another world that I just, one, didn't know existed, and two, that I could be a part of. And I remember they all loved MJ. They all had their Capezio jazz boots, and they could all do the moonwalk. Like they could all do the moonwalk, and I was just like, oh my god, it's just the coolest thing ever. And it's sometimes you don't remember those things until you start talking about it. But yeah, it was just another world. It really was, and I just instantly fell in love with it.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Kel, I know you want to jump in here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Dean, when you were in London and taking these dance classes, like what do you think brought you to the next level, and how does Brian Friedman play a part in this, I believe?
He does play a big part. I think, I was at theatre school for a good few years, and uh, I did street dance and a little bit of tap and a little bit of modern. I hadn't done anything else, and then I finished secondary school, and I kind of didn't know what I was going to do. And I think because I had such a um, bad experience at school, I just wanted to get out of education, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So I ended up speaking to the lady who owned my theatre school. And she said, well, there's a dance college that is based in central London, so you don't have to move away. Because I don't know if you guys know, but in the UK, there's a lot of dance colleges, but they're all based out of central London. So, it's a 3-year professional dance course. They're usually private, so they're a lot of money. And you go away for those 3 years and to train. But there was one that was based in central London, and said, they're offering boys scholarships. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I didn't fully understand the concept of dance college. All I heard was college, but I didn't know that dance college was basically going to this wonderful building every day and dancing from 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Like that concept blew my mind. So anyway, I auditioned, I got a place, and then you have to do your scholarship audition. I didn't get a scholarship straight away, but they offered me a bursary, which is where they pay for you to be there, basically. And then I gained my scholarship halfway through my second year. And so I finished my training. The point of that is that was the bridge between theatre school and then going to professional dance college. And then I graduated, and we had X Factor over here on the TV show, and it was huge in London. It was just massive, and it was like September to December every single year. Dancers knew there was like a solid amount of work. And once we found out that Brian Friedman was creative director and choreographing, like it was the job that everybody wanted. And then there was an audition, and so I went to the audition, and I didn't know that he was choreographing. I walked into the room and I was like, oh my God, that's Brian Friedman. I was just like, this blew my mind. And because I'd been watching him on So You Think You Can Dance.
Right.
And anyway, so I auditioned, and I had to leave half an hour early because I had to go to another audition that I'd been booked in for. And he said, it's okay, just do what you need to do. We'll be in touch. And that was my first ever job. He gave me my first ever professional job.
Wow. That is so cool.
Just,
Yeah, sometimes I like not know. I know you're supposed to do your research and all that stuff, but especially for me, like acting right now, I purposely won't look to see who the director is because it freaks, it messes with your head. And you're like, for some reason, you think this job is more important than the other job. And really, they're all the same. They should all be treated the same, no matter what level you're at, no matter what artist you're working with. So sometimes, I would never suggest that dancers don't do their research. I think you should know who you're walking into the room with. But at the same time, it was probably a blessing for you. So you got a good night's sleep and just didn't have to worry.
You're absolutely right. I would have freaked myself out completely. I would have been on my mind. I probably would have ended up not doing a good audition. So I think you're right. I'm glad I didn't know. But the minute I stepped in the room, I was like, okay, I've got something to prove. This is it. This is the opportunity, and that. So I always say he was so instrumental in getting me into the industry because he really did give me my first ever professional job. And that relationship continues now. You know, we're still great friends, and he's like an annoying big brother. I always say that to him. But you know, we've had a wonderful working relationship, and ended up assisting him for years after that. You know, as well as dancing. But yeah, he really saw something in me, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's really cool. Really cool.
What was it like for you after that experience? Did then like doors start opening for you, Dean? And what was the next thing that got you to where you are now?
You know what's funny? Because Jerry Reeve was assisting Brian, and
I love Jerry.
oh, me too.
Love Jerry.
I
Give
was,
him
I also, I also have to give credit to Jerry, because Jerry, you know, it was Jerry and Brian together, and Jerry, you know, is based in London. He's a choreographer, a creative director, has his agency. So I really have to credit him as well, because it was both of them together that, you know, Jerry was assisting Brian and helped casting and everything. So I did that first week of live shows, and that's when TV was live. Nothing was pre-recorded. We would go in live every Saturday night. The pressure was on, you know. So I did that first week of the live shows, and then I didn't do any more of that series. But once the series was over, they would take all those contestants on a huge UK arena tour in the new year. And there was this UK tour going on, and Brian was obviously choreographing and creative directing that also. And I was at an audition, and I was in the line. It was the longest line ever. And just randomly, I got a phone call from, sorry, it was from, I think it was from Jerry. And basically he was just like, hey, you know, there's the X Factor tour. Yeah, we want to offer you a job on the tour. It was only four male dancers. So they somehow, I don't even know how or why, but from that first week of the live shows to 4 months later, they just decided that I was right for this tour. And that was the most incredible, sensational experience, because I was with dancers that were like the top of our field in the UK that was doing this tour, and I learned so much from them. And that, I think, really kind of put me on the map, because a lot of people didn't really know. I was a newbie. I was fresh out of college. You know, I'd done one job basically, and then all of a sudden I booked this tour. So people were like, wait, who's this new person? You know? So I think that really helped put me on the map. And then that year, I ended up doing a few more other things. And I think really what set the mark was the following year, was when, again, I was back doing X Factor. But that's when Janet was coming over to London to do guest appearance on X Factor, to promote Make Me. The Number Ones tour was about to follow. And I ended up being Gil's assistant. And it was Jerry, again, it was Jerry that was like, hey, you know, Janet's coming over, Gil needs an assistant. I think you're perfect for the job. And that was literally how me and Gil met. I was assistant choreographer on her guest performance in London.
That is so cool. I was going to ask that question. Before we go on with this, though, I just want to jump back, because you were like, you know, and then all of a sudden they picked me, and it's like, it's funny to be on this side of it, and you, I'm sure, can attest to it now, being the choreographer for so many jobs, is that, you know, I can say right now why they probably picked you. It's because you were new, you were hungry, you weren't jaded, you were probably put in the extra work, the extra effort, and they knew, like, yeah, let's take this. It's funny, because I think dancers sometimes don't realize that everything they do and every moment that they have in rehearsal and outside of rehearsal plays a big part in whether they're going to have a career or not, right? So
it really does.
I mean, like you said, you worked with some of the ones that have been there forever, and their necks just went, what? And kind of the same thing that happened to me. I think it was my first assistant job ever, with Walter Painter, who is a Tony Award winning choreographer. At the time, once again, I was so green and so new, and I just went to every audition, not knowing who anyone was, not knowing what it was, and just showing up with my dance bag and my dance shoes, and like, okay, what are we doing? We're doing tap now. Okay, we're doing jazz now. Like, I always just felt like I was like at the end of somebody's rope, just like running around trying to figure it out. But I did one job for Walter, and then the next job, because he was, you know how you are in rehearsal where you're like, you're kind of stuck, and you look over to one of the dancers and they just offer. They're like, they kind of feel what you're feeling, but you can't get it out of your body. And then they do something. You're like, yes, yes, that's what it is. And it's those moments. It's those moments where dancers think they're choreographers, but they're not. But there's also moments when the dancers are just open to giving. And those are the ones that end up becoming assistants, becoming associates, becoming choreographers themselves. And I think that's what I was doing in that moment, because I'm seeing him struggle and everyone else is out just smoking and waiting for their coffee and their dance breaks and they're all, you know, and I'm looking at this man going, I think I know what he wants. And I would just start doing stuff. And next thing I know, the next job we had, he had me come in and assist. I know nothing about assisting other than assisting my sister at this dance studio, which is a lot different, right? Dance studios are way different than professional working. When you're working with a choreographer, you don't really know. He works, you know, you're not doing 8 counts a week in dance class. He's just kind of spinning off the top of his head, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I kid you not, I had dancers, like the old jaded dancers, just sitting back going, did you sleep with him? I'm like, ew, like he's old. No, I love Walter, but he was like older than enough to be my dad. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't that at all, but that was the mentality. Like, who's this new kid? How did she get this job? And it's like, he looked at me and I offered him a step. Like, you guys are all out there talking and smoking, and like, you know, I'm here to dance. This is fun for me. And you know, and granted, when you're green and new and fresh, and it is fun for you, and you don't, you know, and it's funny because I felt like not only did I learn to assist in kind of off the cuff and really quickly, but I also learned the value of not getting caught up in the drama, not getting caught up in the negativity and for no reason. I'm just like, why are these people so mad? Like, I was so happy to have a job that I didn't understand it. So I just wanted to say that to you, because I'm sure that's what they saw in you. They saw the talent that was there that you maybe didn't even know you had in that moment.
Thank you, Tina. I appreciate that. And you know what's funny? Just hearing you speak again, it reminds me of other memories and other situations. And it's so funny because you kind of just said it perfectly. But I remember when we used to do X Factor, sometimes we'd have like 12 numbers to learn for that 1 week of that show. And, you know, sometimes it's a mixed number of boys and girls together. Other times it's just the guys' number. Other times it's just the girls' number. And I remember very clearly, you know, Brian works very, very quickly. He had to, because that was the nature of the show. So, you know, I remember, you know, say we would learn a mixed number together and they'd be like, great, girls go on a 20-minute break. Let me have the guys. We'd do our guys number. And then when he would switch around again, let me have the girls back, I would either stay in that room. I wouldn't leave that room. I would stay in that room. I would be going over that guy's number in the corner, out of his eyesight, but just going over it. And then there was other times where I just wanted to go and sit at the front, and I wouldn't be in his way. I wouldn't speak to him, but I would just go and sit at the front and I would just watch him work. Not because I was trying to like learn the girls' number or anything like that, but I just wanted to see, I was trying to take in what it was that he wanted from his dancers, so that when I got up and was being his dancer, I knew I could almost not preempt, but I just kind of go, okay, he's going to want this, you know? And I think a lot of that, just observing and listening and watching so intently like that, again, when everyone else was out on a cigarette break or again, outside, why I front center, you know, why am I not in that dance break? Whatever, you know, I'm like, great, I'll carry on, but I'm here trying to learn how this person works so that I can be the best possible version of the dancer that he needs, you know? And I remember so that was 2007. I remember the following year, 2008, when, again, we were doing our next season of X Factor. And I remember I auditioned, just like I did the year before, did the guys' audition. And I remember I picked up my bag, our audition was over, I was leaving the room, and the stereo was right by the door. And I remember I was leaving, and it was really crowded by the door. And Brian was like, you know, Dean, like, you know, what are you doing now? And I was like, oh, nothing, I'm done for the day now that I'm done with you. He was like, okay, well, you know, do you want to stay and assist on the girls' audition? Literally just like that. And I remember there were so many people around me, and it was like a movie. It was like, everyone was like, like slow-mo.
Yes.
Whether they were happy for me or I don't know, I don't care. But I put that bag down so quickly, and I was like, whatever you need, I'll stay till 7. Like, I don't care. But it was those moments of just like, I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to, be next to greatness and just, yeah, it was just such a wild, wild time. But it's those moments that really, I think, sculpt you into who you become.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, the difference is you were there to take it in so that you could be better at your craft. You weren't taking it in that Brian would notice and go, "Oh, look how hard I'm working and he'll pick me one day." And that's where I think also dancers get very confused. It's like they don't realize, like, I can read your intent. You know,
Mhm.
if you are standing here next to me to be better for the project, or you're trying to get something out of me for your future. And they just don't realize how obvious they are with that kind of stuff.
It's so transparent. It's so
It's
transparent.
so transparent. It's so transparent. So again, I just think that if they go in, I love dancers that are hungry. I love dancers that are, like you said, you probably, if he would have stayed till midnight, you would have stayed till midnight. You probably would have stayed, even if you had like an exam the next morning, just like, screw it, I'm here. Like, and I think especially starting out, dancers don't realize how important that energy is. Um, because when you are in a creative space, and now that you probably are all the time, it's just, and it's another reason why choreographers hire people that they know and they trust, because they know, listen, when I'm depleted, my dancers are going to pull it out of me, right? We're going to pull together, we're going to create something together. And that alone is priceless. You just, and it's not something you can teach someone. They either have it inside of them because that's the type of person they are. And maybe some people can learn it, but I think for the most part, in my experience, it's like you either have that inside of you as not as an ambitious go-getter, but just as someone who's like, I want to get better in life. I want to get better at what I'm doing. I want to get better at this project. I want to make it, and because you want to make it better for, Brian, you want to make it better for Janet, you want to make it better for the artists that you're working with, because it sounds like we're a lot alike in that, where it's like at the end of the day, if they're happy, I'm really happy.
That's
You know,
it.
yeah,
And yeah, and you're right. And there truly, from the bottom of my heart, there was never any part of me that necessarily wanted something from Brian. I wasn't seeking anything from Brian. I truly wasn't. It wasn't, like you say, it wasn't about that for me. It was
right.
about just being in the room with every part of my being in whatever capacity that was. And that also meant the times that I wasn't dancing, still being present in the room. And
Absolutely.
now being a choreographer and being on the other side, you really do see through almost immediately the people that are doing it because they want something, or the people that are doing it because they just want to be there and they just love being there. It counts for so much
Yeah,
on whether you're being rehired, your longevity in the industry, because at the end of the day, I know some of the best dancers in the world, but if they're not good people, I don't want them in the room.
you don't want them on tour in a bus next to you. That's for sure.
Very true.
Dean, what was it like for you? Because we have to get here now. Like, so Janet's coming over, she's coming over, who you just described in the beginning of this interview as like she was your start with Together Again, and Tina also with the choreography. What was it like to meet Gil first, and then how did the Janet connection go from there?
It was a bit of a crazy story. I'll try and keep it short, but basically there was, so every week I keep coming back to X Factor, but it was such a starting point. But every week on X Factor there was guest artists, and towards the end of the season, this particular week, it was Janet, and it was 2009, and obviously she was coming over to do this guest performance, and my agent called me and was like, "We know how much Janet means to you. We know that that's a dream for you to dance for her. She's coming over. The record label are asking for a list of dancers that are going to audition. It's a private audition, just 75 people. Do you want us to put you down?" And I was like, duh, obviously. So I was like, put me down right now. I don't care. I'll clear my whole day. So that was that. And then Jerry called me and he wanted to, he got asked to put dancers forward as well. And so I was like, oh, I'm already put on the list with another agent. He was like, okay, all good, no worries. Cut to a few days later, and he called me and he was like, hey, like, there's been a bit of confusion. Like, I saw the list for the record label of dancers that are going to audition. Your name's not on there. And I was like, Jerry, whatever you do, like, please make sure my name is on there. Like, I'm available for the audition. I don't know what's happened, but like, I'm available. I will be there.
Right.
So, okay, cool. I got you. Don't worry. Call me back like an hour later. And then he was like, hey, just to update you, you're not going to audition. So I was like, okay. He was like, Gil's coming over like 5 days earlier and he actually needs an assistant. And I think you're perfect for the role. So you're going to be Gil's assistant. Like, that was the whole thing. Like, and Jerry being Jerry, he's so nonchalant, and I'm just like inside, I'm dying, like getting this phone call, you know. So that was how that happened, and then Gil arrives, and everyone gate crashes the audition. Everyone gate crashes. It might be 75, 450 people turn up. So we get to the studio, and I go to Gil and I said, hey, we met, and I said, just so people are gate crashing. There's 450 people here. And he just looked at me. It's like, I'll see everyone. I'll see them all. And I was like, wow. And that was my first inkling, very small, into who he was as a person. And then he just kind of was like, why don't we just start with, why don't you go outside? Why don't you just pick the first 25 people that as dancers here in London, maybe they're the most working dancers. Let's start with those first. So it's like, okay. So all of a sudden, I've only been in the industry a year and a half, and I'm having to go outside, and I'm having to.
Dean, remember we're friends. Dean, hey buddy, hey.
A lot of that. I'm like, wait, we don't kiki. You're not always very nice to me, But a lot of that. But then, all of a sudden, you kind of got this bit of power, and I'm very particular. I don't like using the word power, but I think you know what I mean. But like, you do in that moment, you're being told to go and select people and be like, I want you, and that's a big deal in that moment because everybody wants this job. So anyway, so we did the whole audition, went through the whole process, and there was one spot left for a male dancer. And I just said to Gil, we still need, there's one person we're missing. We still need to cast this last spot. And he just looked at me and he was just like, no, he was like, that's for you. You're going to dance as well. So that was it.
Oh my God.
And I was, of course, I was still a dancer at that time, and the dream was always to dance for Janet in that moment. But then I got to be assistant choreographer and I was like, oh my God, it's like, you get to live out your dream, but in an even bigger way than you thought it could ever be, which is such a magical thing. But there was still this moment where he was like, no, you're going to dance as well. And I was like, oh my God, I get to do both. Like, how special and how incredible is that? And that was it. That was my first experience. And yeah, it was just a pretty wild thing.
So that just gave me chills. That's so cool. But again, it's a testament to all the work you put in prior, right? And the way you carried yourself, that Jerry, like, first of all, I just love Jerry Reeves. He's my lad from across the pond. He's just a good soul. I've hired Jerry a ton before he was a big fancy agent. But those kind of memories and those kind of connections they really are truly magical. But again, which I always reiterate as many times as I can, that it just doesn't come out of the blue, right? You earned that spot. You earned it, and it was because you were there for the love of dance, you were just expressing your connection to music and dance and your hard work. And it just like all of that stuff, which people don't understand because they just go, who's Dean? Oh, he's the new court. Well, like nobody knows how you got there and the work that you did before. My story, Brian, Friedman's story, like everyone's story. It's just all of a sudden you're on TV and everyone thinks you just decided one day I want to dance and then it happened. You know, it's like you don't just walk into Janet Jackson's life after not putting in the work for it.
And it's so funny because there was a lot of people, dancers on the day going, almost like pushing and going, why don't you ask to dance? Ask Gil if you can dance as well. And I was like, I'm just not that person. I'm
Right.
happy and grateful. I'm even in this room doing
Right.
what I'm doing. Like, I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm not greedy. I don't need to push for that. That's not who I am as a person. I truly believe in the work always has to speak for itself. If people see the work and that's enough, that's what I want to be enough. That's what I want to be what gets me the job, not because I'm asking for something. I'm that person. And eventually, it worked out. Gil
Yeah.
saw whatever he needed to see, and I think it's moments like that that change the trajectory of someone's relationship. Because if I had gone to him and said, hey, I'm really grateful to be here as your assistant, but I really want to dance as well. Can I do that? That might have given him a completely different perception of me as a person. And it could have
Yeah.
been the end of the relationship. So it's just things like for me, it always comes back to who you are as a human as well as talent.
And it's funny because it's similarly, that's kind of what happened with me with Rhythm Nation. Um, with the tour, we'd done the videos already, and the tour was just supposed to be the four guys. And just as you have worked out with Janet when she likes to just dance for a workout, myself and Karen, the other female dancer who ended up on tour, were doing that. She wanted to work out. We're like, okay, well, we'll put numbers together and we'll just meet you at the studio for an hour and we'll dance. And this went on for a few weeks. And Renee would come in and he'd talk to us about the tour. And we're like, oh, that sounds amazing. Like, you guys are going to be great. And like about the third time he brought up a story, he kept including like, so you guys, this is going to be really great. We're like, yeah, I think the guys are going to love it. Like, you guys are going to kill it out there. He's like, no, I mean, all of us. You guys know you're going on tour, right? And we're like, what? I'm like, shut up. Stop it. That's me. Stop it.
Oh my God.
And literally, I didn't tell anyone for like 2 months because I thought he's messing with me. He's going to because we had that joking relationship. I'm like, I don't trust him. I don't trust that this wasn't just, because, working with artists, they get ideas and they're like, oh, let's do this. And then by dinner time, they're like, never mind. Meanwhile, you called everyone and and then you're like, oh, yeah, no, that's not happening. Or you've got to call dancers back and go, sorry, they jumped the gun. They actually aren't hiring 5 dancers now. They're only hiring 2. So I just kind of held on to that going, I'm not telling anyone till this is real. And then finally, I think it was like a month later, maybe 2. I think it was at Thanksgiving dinner. I told my family, hey, I think I'm going on tour. Like I was still like not sure. Yeah.
Crazy to me. That's insane.
Dean,
Wow.
can you explain to the fans what it was like for you to meet Janet for the first time? And also, because you've now worked with her for several years, what is her X factor for you?
Um, I yeah, I think when we was doing the London performance, I remember, I think we rehearsed till 3 a.m. one day, and we were so in so much pain from rehearsal, but like I didn't care. I was having the best time ever. But I remember, by that point, the Americans had come over. There were 6 Americans that were coming over as well, so they had joined us for rehearsals. And then everyone had to go for fit-ins. But I remember Janet walking in and Gil kind of had us introduce ourselves to her one by one and, kind of go up to her, shake her hand. And I don't know, not in a cheesy way, but I do feel like there was this moment with me and her. It was very brief, but it just felt very honest. And in a weird sort of way, I remember it very clearly. I always felt like that wasn't the last time that I was going to see her. And not in that arrogant way or nothing like that. Like, I thought that once I'd done that for Janet, that was it. The dream was ticked off. I was never going to work for her again. That's just what I convinced myself of. I don't know where that came from, but that's just how I felt. But then there was also the flip side to that of just like, I feel like we're going to cross paths again. And obviously that wasn't till another, 9 years later, but we did. And obviously it's blossomed into what it is. But that first encounter was so brief. But I think when I came back for the EMAs, and then I had a bit more of a, there was moments when we was doing the EMAs in Bilbao where Gil had to leave rehearsal, and I need to go and look at the kabuki, or whatever it was. Can you just kind of take over for a moment? It's like, yeah, of course. And just, I think that was my first proper look into who she was in rehearsals, and I remember we was doing the last two run throughs of the piece, and I remember her coming up to me and like, Dean, like, do you mind if I don't do the last run through? Like, I need to go and get my hair done before dress run. Da, da, da. And I was like, oh my god, like, no, do what you need to do. Like, why are you asking me? Like, that's But it was just like she was. But now I come to understand she was being so respectful of me in the moment of taking control of the room and running the rehearsal. And I didn't understand that at the moment, but now I know I'm just like, wow, she's just being so respectful. And I was like, oh my god, like, you do whatever you need to do. We're only going to do one more run through anyway, and then we're done. And she's like, okay, I'll stay. And it was moments like that I think really, that was the start of our relationship, I think. But I think when it comes to what her X factor is, there's so many, I think. But I think for me, I think what really sticks out, and I think it's her work ethic. It's her work ethic. It blows my mind. It really does. I'm just like, wow, that is why you are who you are. That is why you are the level of greatness that you are. She is music royalty. She is a Jackson. It's like that work ethic cannot be taught. You've got it or you haven't. And I think working with newer, younger artists, some of them understand that and some of them do not at all. Some of them want to walk into a rehearsal, do 1 hour and leave. And Lorianne Gibson said this, and I don't know where she said it. I don't know if it was a TV show or a pod. I cannot remember, but it's always stuck with me. And she said, when you've been around it, you know what it is. You really understand that. And I can't put it any better than that. But I think that correlates to this situation for sure. Because when you've been around somebody, like Janet, who is a global superstar, we don't need to talk about it, we all know. But when you've been around somebody like that, who, will be the first in rehearsal, the last to leave rehearsal, will give her all the time, and of that level and that magnitude, it's like, and then you go with somebody else who, like I said, wants to turn up and do an hour and leave. It's just like, you can't compare the two. You just can't. And right. I wish more artists understood that, but I think it's her work ethic. It's just undeniable.
I would second that. A lot of factors for sure, but no one compares. I've worked with so many other artists. I will say Jennifer Lopez would be a close second in that they're there before you get there. They're there after you're there. They're taking meetings in between rehearsal. It's like, hey, can you guys run it? I'm going to go do this, whatever. It's an interview sometimes. It's another meeting. It's a meeting about a different show that you guys are doing, but maybe it's not the tour. And it's like, and to still be always composed, right? Mm-hmm. Like she's, again, like no matter what goes wrong, and I can honestly just say this, having not worked with her for many years, just to know her as a person, to know that she's still this way, no matter what happens, she doesn't freak out. She doesn't cuss people out. If a part of the stage falls, it's just like, okay, you need time to put that together. Like, what do you need? Where other people would just, you're like, oh, someone's fired because they can't take that. And so I feel like that, and that goes hand in hand with the respect, right? The respect she gives her choreographers, the respect she gives her dancers, because again, that's been ingrained in her since birth. And the beauty, I think, of it is that she, through all of these years, she hasn't lost any of it. She's still the same person when it comes to that, right? How important rehearsal is, how important respect is, how important the end result is, and how you get there is important.
Absolutely. You're absolutely
How did
right.
you oh, go ahead, finish
No,
your
no,
thought.
it's okay, you go ahead.
I was just wondering, so how did you then transition into doing choreography for her? How did that ball start rolling for you?
So like I said, I did the EMAs in Bilbao with her, which was the end of 2018. It was like November 2018. And what I didn't know at that time was obviously she was getting ready to announce her Las Vegas residency, Metamorphosis, which was happening the first half of 2019. I think it was April. Um, and I remember, again, I was on tour at the beginning of 2019. It was like February, I think. I was on the tour bus and I had a phone call from Gil. And he was like, between me and you, Janet's getting ready for Las Vegas residency. We're looking for choreographers. I'm going to send you a list of every song she's made. And I want you to just pick 2 songs and just create what you want. And I was like, oh, okay. So, but sorry, what I need to say is me and Gil reconnected because Brian and Gil were obviously faculty on the Pulse in the States. And Brian was doing his last ever year at the Pulse. And Brian saw a piece of work that I choreographed on my dance company in London. And when he saw that, he was like, I think you'll be really great for the protege program at the Pulse. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh my God, I've been watching the Pulse on YouTube for years. So I was like, sign me up. I'm in. Didn't know what I was getting into. I did not know what I was getting into. I did not understand there's going to be 150 dancers. Like, it was the craziest experience. But I went to New York. I choreographed the protege program piece that year for the gala. And I remember I was in rehearsals and I was teaching something to the dancers, and behind me, Gil had walked into the room, and one of the dancers was like, Dean, Gil's here. And I was like, shut up. No, he's not. And they was like, yes, he's behind you. And I was like, oh my God, Gil's in the room watching me teach. I was like, just losing my mind. And anyway, I went up to him. I was like, Gil, it's so good to see you. And that was, so just so you know, that was how me and Gil reconnected after when I first worked with him. So and then the Pulse asked me to stay on. So I was doing the Pulse after that for a few years. And then that was why Gil asked me to do Bilbao. So he was like, we're coming to Europe. Will you be my right hand, basically? So that was how I ended up doing Bilbao. And then Vegas was coming up. And that's when he reached out and was like, just kind of choreograph 2 pieces, choreograph what you want. There's no, direction. I just want to see what you're going to do. So I decided to do Feedback and When We Ooh. And I think we all know that whatever Janet does is iconic. Everything, you listen to a song, you can see the choreography, you can see the music video. So when it got to Feedback, which I love that song, I was just like, I almost have to approach this as if, let me imagine this is the first time that anyone's seeing her perform this song. Like an artist debuts the song for the first time on an award show. Like, that's how I approached it, because no matter what you do, it's going to be hard to go up against the original. That's just a given. So that's what I did. I choreographed 2 pieces and I filmed them. I sent them to Gil and he sent them to Janet. And then I got a message back from Gil and he was like, hey, just so you know, like, we really love what you've done with Feedback. But Feedback isn't in the set list for Vegas. And I was like, and I thought that was the end of it. I was like, okay, all good. Thank you so much for asking me anyway. Like, what an honor. And he was like, no. He was just like, Janet really loves what you've done so much with Feedback that we're gonna, she wants to put Feedback into the set list for Vegas.
Wow.
Like, honestly, I think I cried. I actually think I cried when I got there because I was just like, when somebody of that level sees your work in that way and just respects it enough to do that, it was just like the most surreal thing. And also what I didn't realize, I thought it was like a submission, and Gil was like, "No, we always knew I wanted you to choreograph. It was more just like a workshop kind of thing, you know." I didn't understand that at that moment. So, so then I went to LA. We started rehearsals for the Vegas residency, and then and we'd be in rehearsals, and Jan would go to her corner. We call it the box, where Wiley would go and work with her and teach her track for the whatever number we was working on. Right. And I thought that that's what was going to happen with feedback. I would teach Wiley what I want her to do, and then he would go and work with her. But obviously Wiley was also in the show, so there was moments where other choreographers were coming in. Say Luther was coming in for one day, right. Ellie had to learn what he was doing for the show. So Gil came up to me and, it was kind of like, she wants to learn feedback. And I said, okay, I'll tell Wiley what I want her to do. And he was like, no, she wants to learn it from you. So I was like, okay. Go in the corner, we start learning feedback together. And that was, I think that was the real moment of like us really getting to know each other, how each other works. Right. I remember there being this whole discussion about, the musical arrangement with Daniel Jones, who obviously is no longer with us. We love you, Daniel. But I remember her calling me over and just being like, what do you think? What do you want your number to look like and sound like? And, do you want to keep the second verse? Or do you not want to, and I remember just looking at her, just being like, I can't believe you're even asking me that. This is your music. This is your show. Like, even if you said you just wanted to do a chorus and a verse, I'd be like, great, I love it, But just the fact that she was willing to include me in that conversation of just like, wow, she's a true artist because she appreciates all kinds of art. Whether it be singing, dancing, choreography, everything. There's such a level of respect there. And I think feedback originally was going to be in the encore for Vegas. And then I remember teaching it to the dancers, and I remember her watching it, and she said, can I see it? And I said, yeah, of course. And, kind of, will you do my track just so I can see what I'm doing? So I said, yeah. So we run it. And then she wanted to see it once more. And then she's like, it just feels so like rich. Like, that's what she said. She's like, this number just feels like rich. It feels like Parisian. And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. There's a bit of an attitude to it. And then feedback ended up becoming the first number in the show after Empty. So Empty was her entrance. And then obviously feedback was like the first number. And again, she blew my mind with just how she wanted to find a place for it that felt right for the show, So, and I don't want any of that to sound egotistical at all, because it wasn't that at all, but that really was a very organic, natural journey of feedback. That's why feedback is my baby, because it had such a journey to being in the show. And that was how it happened.
That's really cool. And it's also says a lot, because when an artist comes to you, and that was one of my favorite things of working with Janet, is I could come to her. I felt comfortable enough that when we, after years, obviously, of working together, but to be able to go straight to the musical director and go, hey, I've got an idea. And knowing that if she hates it, it's out, but knowing that you had the freedom, right? And that she had the trust in you. She saw something in you that otherwise, I mean, Janet's sweet and respectful, but she would never have asked you those questions if she didn't have a trust in your vision and your capability, right? She would have said, okay, and then made the decision, and you would have adapted to it. But it's a really cool thing when I think any artist really kind of just opens themselves up and just goes like, gives you that moment to offer what you would do. And it's funny because Prince said to me once, we were working on Get Off. I was the assistant at the time. Sean Cheeseman was the choreographer, and we were walking through the set, and because we were trying to do not a continuous shot, but something similar to that. And he was looking at something, and I don't remember what it was, but he made a change. He's like, how about if we did this and that? I'm like, oh yeah, that's better. He goes, it's not better, it's just different. And I went, first I was like, wait, what, did he just insult me? I'm like, no, that wasn't. This is you have those moments in your head, like, this is a learning He wasn't being mean to you. But I've always thought about that, like, because I think a lot of times, depending on younger artists, newer artists, or older egotistical artists, there is that thing where it's like, I'm not trying. It's not a competition. It's not better or worse. It's just it's different. Let's try it like this. And Janet's always been great about that. She's always been open to any suggestion or any kind of a creative change, or especially when she's doing the same songs from tour to tour to tour. It's like, how do you make it more special? How do you make it different this time, and still honor, if you're keeping old choreography, how do you honor that, and vice versa. So I just, again, it's a testament to her comfortability with you and her trust that she had in you to open that up. But I understand that being on the other side, you're like, oh crap, okay, you want to hear my thoughts. You're trying to calm that voice in your head that's freaking out, and like, no, I'm going to act like I know what I'm talking about in this moment right now.
Because all of a sudden, it's like, wait, what is my thought? I don't even know what I want, you know? But then, you kind of, you know that you're in good hands and you're dealing with the best of the best. And what I love is it becomes a true collaboration. It becomes a true conversation in that moment. And Daniel would be like, oh, what about some stops? And I'd be like, oh my God, I love that. Like, where could, it just becomes a real true collaboration. And that's when those moments happen, I really love that, because it feels like, wow, we're really in this all together, and we all just want the best product at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Dean, Tina mentioned just moments ago, like obviously the balancing act that you guys have to do, both Tina, you, and any other choreographer. If there's songs that you're working on that do have iconic choreography, like we know that Tina's done so much for Janet, when you had to get your hands on stuff like If and other songs, like, is it like a true challenge for you to try to balance old with new, and how you honor but also move forward?
My anxiety goes through the roof, just so you know. No, I'm kind of glad you asked this, because I think it's such a unique position to be in the sense of, I am very, very respectful of everyone and everything that has come before me. The sense of me being here doing this job right now. I'm also like, I just try to be an encyclopedia of Janet, in the sense of like, all the videos, all the live performances, and just, I think you have to, because there has to be such a distinct level of respect to the work and to her as an artist and to her legacy. Because no matter how I look at it, I am part of adding on to her legacy, and that deserves a level of respect. And it's not lost on me the gravitas of that and the responsibility that I have. And I try to take that very seriously. So, there are moments, and I think I've definitely settled into the job a little bit more now. So there's maybe things that I don't overthink as much, but then there's other times where you do have to really think about it, because it needs that. So, and I hope that makes sense. But, when it got to, doing things like, okay, why don't we do something new with If? And I'm outside, I'm like, oh my God, we can't change If, But I also understand that it's not because they don't like it or because they don't want to do it. They're just like, let's just do something new for this tour. Let's just try it. Let's just take it in a different direction and see what that is. And then once I got my head into that place of being like, it's not as serious as I'm trying to make it, because of the love that I have for the work, the original work, I have to separate that feeling and go, no, they're absolutely right. They want to do something new, and that's the job that I'm here to do, and I have to do that. So again, it's like the journey that I have with, and I'm going to use If as an example, the journey I have with that is, I can't do anything as iconic as the original, and I'm fine with that, So all I can do is almost take it so far away from the original that it can't be compared, because why would I want to do anything close to the original? The original is the original, So it's like with feedback, it's like, okay, let me take it a completely different direction, as if it's the first time people are seeing it. And I almost have to approach it a similar way. But then you kind of start with that foundation and that starting block of, okay, let me take it really far away from what the original is. The first verse, for instance, let me
Right.
take it away from that, a different formation. Let's have it more static and more picturesque, whatever it is.
Right.
And then I have to layer into that, okay, well, how do I still make it Janet and give it the essence of Janet? And how do I put my creative voice into that? Because that's what they want. That's the job that I'm here to do. So it's kind of just trying to find a mix of those three things. And sometimes that is really daunting. I think it was definitely the most daunting for me personally. And then there's other moments, like when I did Trust to Try for this residency, it was the last thing I choreographed because I just all I had in my head was Trust to Try from All For You tour. I watched that DVD endlessly, so that's all I had in my head. And it ended up being the last thing I choreographed, but it's one of my favorite numbers in the show. So sometimes when I take a step away from it and give myself the space to just breathe, and you end up just feeling it and finding it, and you're okay, I'm happy with this product. But I think it's different and it's unique to each song for sure.
Yeah, I would say that for me too as well. Like that's why I didn't even bother to touch Rhythm Nation because first of all, it was only for us doing the Janet tour, it was only one tour away. I'm like, I can't change that. I mean, that is it was a statement. It was everything. It was like you couldn't separate in my mind, you couldn't separate the movement from the music. There was nothing else. So as the tours went on, I'm like, can we do an intro? Can we do an outro? And I can keep Rhythm Nation the way it is, and I'll add on to the front, and then I'll add on to the back. I think we did an intro. I think from Velvet Rope we did the nunchucks at the end, but we did an intro salute thing or whatever at the beginning, and then the only thing I changed really was staging because I wanted that to look different. To me, that was the only way to get a different feel from it. Without actually changing the steps, because I would have had to go so far the other direction, like you were saying, because in that time frame, it was so new and so fresh still on everyone. People were coming to see Anthony Thomas's choreography of Rhythm Nation and nothing else. Like you didn't dare touch that. But then we did Pleasure Principle, which was a song that I always wanted to dance to, but I couldn't recreate Barry Lather's. I wasn't going to have her on a chair, possibly breaking her face every night, and we weren't going to do it. And again, had to go a completely different way with that. And I totally understand it. There is no disrespect in any of the changes that you guys have made over the years. You can't, when somebody's lived and had a successful career as long as she has, at some point, you got to change it. Even the diehards want to see something a little, and there will always be the diehards that go, don't touch this, don't touch that, don't touch this. And there'll be the people that are still even new, right? It's the children of our original fans that are coming and bringing their kids. And it's like, they're not as attached and they want to see a new flavor and they want to see a new feel. You've got new dancers, you've got new looks. It's like, it all makes sense. And,
and I think what I've come to realize is, we know this anyway, but in life, you can't please everyone all the time. You just can't. Some people can love it, some people are not, and that's fine. But I think what I've come to realize is that I do have such a respect for the fan base as well, because I was the fan base many, many years ago.
Right.
So I get it, I understand it, but I think, you touched on it, and it's like going back to If really quickly, like even when it got to the intro, I did a new intro, but I couldn't get away from this. I just couldn't get away from it. I was like, oh my God, I just need 4 counts of it. Like it's almost blasphemous to take it out completely. So like, Gil, can I just keep 4 counts of it? He was like, okay, fine. I was like, I can't get rid of it completely. I cannot, even if it is just the 4 counts. So the audience see it, they think it's coming and you trick them and then you go into something new, but Yeah, and I think the breakdown will never go anywhere. The breakdown to me is like Rhythm Nation. It's never going to change. It will stay forever, and rightly so. But then, there are moments you just kind of go, let's just do something new. Because again, for somebody like that who has the career that she has, who's been doing the songs as long as she has, I'm sure she wants to do something new sometimes as well. And
For sure.
so I really, I feel like we're on the same thought with that for sure.
Dean, what was it like for you to decide how the last couple of tours are going to go with, who was going to get chosen as dancers? Obviously, the last two, she's had the male dancers. We haven't seen females in a while. And can you also answer, like, I think all of us who love Janet so much are so excited to know that she's wanted to perform so much in the last few years. Can you tell us maybe a little bit why that is?
Um, I think, I think people remember that in 2020 she announced the Black Diamond album, and obviously we was getting ready for the tour, and I was about to do the Pussycat Dolls tour right before we was going to do Janet's tour. So I was kind of gearing up for both of them at the same time. And then obviously the pandemic happened, so that kind of got struck. And 2 years later, we was having our first show back. And I think that when we was talking about Black Diamond, I remember us having a conversation, and I think she was saying, I've never done a tour with just guys. I've done performances with just guys, but not a whole tour. And I kind of want to try it and see how it is. And Tina, I'm sure you'll attest to this, but Janet's a tomboy. She grew up with so many brothers, and she always says that herself. I'm such a tomboy, but but I think she wanted to push herself, and I want to see what it's like being the only girl and really working on that feminine side even more, and just being that only girl around all those guys. And that was really the vision for Black Diamond at the time. And then obviously that didn't happen. So then I think when it got to coming back to performing, that idea was still around, it's still stuck, which is, our first show back was Kentucky Derby in, I think it was 22. And that was it. That was, it was her and the four guys. And I think the more shows we did like that, the more she just enjoyed it, and so it ended up sticking for the tour. And, Together Again tour was such a huge success. And then there was the option to do it again. And, Gil being the genius that he is, he's got such a creative mind and it's constantly going. So even when we're doing the first leg of the tour, he's already thinking about what he can do for the next tour, So that it just was such a natural progression, I think. And I think it works. And I think in this day and age, there's a lot of artists that think to have a great performance, you need 20 to 30 dancers. And maybe for a huge space, yes, you want bodies to fill the space, but I think we have to remember who we're dealing with. And that is an absolute legend, an icon. And like I said, she's music royalty, she is greatness. And she could go on stage by herself and it would be enough, That is the command that she has on a stage. I think the fact that she doesn't need or want to hide behind 12 dancers, 16 dancers, I think is incredible. And I love it. I think it's so fresh, and I think I think it works, and I think she enjoys it. So it's just kind of stuck as that, really.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, and that's the beauty of Jan, is that I think you had said this earlier, or maybe it was on a different interview that I saw with you, where she isn't afraid to let the people around her shine. She never feels not even like she needs to hide behind. Like, there are people who, they need the bells and whistles. They have forgotten their artistry. It's like, I had one artist one time go, well, after we do this and after we do that, what do you want me to do? And I was like, sing the song. Like, at some point, you just got to sing the song. Like, that people are coming to see you. They're not coming to see the fireworks and the 20 dancers. And you could hold the stage alone. And that's what Janet's always been able to do. And I think that there's a difference between artists, I think, that hire other dancers and other performers because of their own insecurity. They kind of need to kind of fold into the fold with everybody. And then, but Janet's found a way, I think, just, and that's it, it's who she is, right? Where nothing is, she understands nothing's taken away from her from highlighting someone else and giving them the spotlight. And I know that I can see on your face that you've experienced, I'm sure all the guys have experienced it. I'm sure Gil has experienced, it's like anyone who is around her, she gives them the light. And all that does is illuminate her more, in my opinion, because she isn't afraid. And I think it's funny. I never put together the fact that she has so many brothers and that now that there's just guys on tour, I'm like, of course she feels right at home. Why wouldn't she? You know, I don't know. I don't know why I never thought of that, but yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And I could only say that because, you know, she said it to me in rehearsal. She's like, you know, I've just been around my brothers my whole life. And I was like, oh my God, of course you have, you know. And she's the baby of the group, you know. It's like, that's what she knows, you know. And I think, you know, linking that together, and you're absolutely right. And yeah, I didn't, Janet, first of all, doesn't need to hide. She doesn't want to hide. She's not trying to hide. But I just mean that in context to other artists. That's what I meant earlier. Sorry, just so you know. But yeah, but, you know, but I think it works. I think it absolutely works. And I think it's amazing that, you know, I'm not counting this residency. I'm just talking about the last two tours, that the five of them can go out there and do a 2 hour show and it be enough. You know, that's a testament to how great they all are.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And a testament to you too, Dean, because you're now like this last tour and now the residency, you're dancing. So how did that come about? We're happy that you're doing it again with her.
God, don't remind me. No, I think it's yeah, it's a very unique experience and one I'm very, very grateful for. And again, completely unexpected. You know, and they love that house song. And I mean, do you want me to speak on this, Kelly? Do you want me to speak on this?
Yeah.
You know, they love they've loved that house song, and they always wanted to use it for a show. And Together Again 2.0 was the time they wanted to use it. And I remember we was in London, the boys were there, we had our last day of rehearsal, and me and Gil decided just to go for a little drink after rehearsal, just me and him. And we was, you know, we hadn't done the intro. It was like, we'll do the intro once we get to production rehearsals. Great. So we're sitting there talking, and he goes, you know, I think that should be you. And I was like, shut up, don't be so annoying. Like, Gil's also like an annoying big brother. He always winds me up. So I'm thinking he's joking. Whatever, shut up. Cut to that same evening, we're on the phone, me, him, and Janet, and you know, we're just talking about some stuff, and then we're getting off the phone, and he goes, just before we get off the phone, I just want to leave you with something. I think Dean should be the MC. so, so I was like, wait, he's being for real. He's not even joking. So that was that. Cut to maybe, I think the next day or 2 days, I can't remember. There was, oh no, that's right. Sorry, it was the last day of rehearsal, but Janet decided she wanted to do 2 more days, just me and her. So I was going to meet the boys a little bit later than planned in LA. So me and Janet are in rehearsals, and she said, look, I know Gil brought up the other day about, you know, being the MC, but I just want to know, how do you feel about that? You know, is that something you even want to do? I said, look, there's a lot of personal barriers I have to get through to be able to go back on stage, because I've not been on stage in 10 years. That just, I'm a choreographer. That is my profession. I don't perform anymore. I said, and it was 10 years. 2014 was the last time I performed on stage as a dancer, and 2024 was obviously when I went back. So we had this whole discussion, and you know, Janet is amazing. She gets it. She understands that people have their own insecurities. They want to feel comfortable, and she just did everything she could to make sure that I was as comfortable as I needed to be able to do that job. And so that was kind of the conversation me and her had. And I was very honest with her. Look, I'm going to have to do some work to get to that point. But I also just want to throw myself in at the deep end. And I just kind of want to do it and just have fun with it and embrace it a bit, you know? And so anyway, we was in production rehearsals, and Gil just and I heard nothing about it for a little while. And then Gil just came up to me and was like, stop staging the boys. Can you just send them on a 10-minute break? I need you to go and get measured. That was how I found out I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. And then, from that point on, it was, okay, you need to go into a fit in. And Janet came to all my fit ins and she was so incredible with, you know, what that look should be, what the MC character is. And it was the most incredible feeling. It really was. I don't think I will ever forget the opening night of Together Again 2.0. I was climbing the walls. I couldn't sit still. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. But the minute I stepped on stage and I heard that, I was like, wow, I really forgot what performing and dance can do for you and how it just makes you feel. And it was just the most incredible feeling. And I think being able to connect with the fans, I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but connect with them in a different way that they had known me. They know me as Janet's choreographer. So then all of a sudden they're like, wait, who's this new person? And then like, wait, that's Dean. It was just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And then obviously that eventually turned into, do we add more dancers for this Vegas residency, or do we keep it as it is? It works. Janet loves the team, the crew that we have. And, I don't think we want to add new people to that, but I do think Dean should go into the whole show. And that was really how that happened. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's cool.
Congratulations. Tina, do you have anything to add about that?
No, because I'm bummed that I didn't get to see the show because you guys came through. Charlotte twice, she called in inviting me to come. And one time I was heading to LA the same weekend. And then the second time, you guys, I think it was one of three, it was the last of three. So you guys were going to be in and out. And I'm like, I can't, people who know me, I'm like, not only do I not like social media, I don't like driving. I'm like, I don't think I can drive 4 hours and turn around and come home. And I know fans are going, you're crazy. What? I would drive 12 hours. I'm like, yeah, I can't. So I didn't get to see you guys again when you were in Charlotte. So I'm kind of bummed because I would have loved to see that.
Yeah. Next time for sure.
Just a few more questions before you guys go. I did want to ask you, Dean, like, what do you feel about the Janet fans? Because like Tina's obviously you've been a part of the Janet family for years now, and Tina knows obviously what the fan base has been like for her when she was there. What do the fans mean to you, and are they different from any other artists that you've worked for?
First of all, I think they're completely different to any other artist I've worked for. And I think, and I don't think I know exactly what that is, but the only thing I can really pinpoint is that I think they've all grown up with Janet. So, when you're at her show now, you've got, I think Tina kind of said it earlier, you've got the fans that have been with her and are now like similar, same age, but then you've also got their children, and then and it is so beautiful because you've got such a diverse age range of this fan base, and I think that is such a beautiful thing. But they're such diehards, but in the most beautiful, incredible way. And there's 9 times out of 10 they are so lovely, they are so sweet. They message you with the nicest things, and I love meeting them when we're walking around the hotel, and they really are just the nicest fan base. They really are, and I love meeting with them, speaking with them. But I think again, we all just have such a love and respect for Janet's music. The music is so timeless and so classic, and if a Janet track comes on now in my headphones, like I will still listen to it. I'm like, oh, this song, like I'm still not tired of it, even choreographing to it and dancing to it. I'm like, and I think that's the magic of her artistry and her music. And I think we all love that. And I think that really is what ties us all together.
Something I wanted to ask again, the two of you, because of the different time frames, and I want to see what your different answers will be. Tina, I wanted to ask you, when you were with Janet, obviously like it was, the 90s and obviously late 80s as well. And she was really like like she was it for so many people. Like you guys were the it act. Everybody wanted to see you guys. Everybody wanted to be around you guys. Was she able to enjoy, you think, like really being on stage, doing tours like Velvet Rope tour and the Janet tour? Or was she kind of in a frame of mind sometimes where like I've got to do not I've got to do this, but like this is a big deal for my career. And I'm wondering if, and my next question to Dean will be, do you think she's enjoying it now more because she's already accomplished so much? So Tina, I'll start with you.
That's good. It's interesting. So being a dancer on the Rhythm Nation tour, so that was the first tour. Um, I don't know how much she got to enjoy it, honestly, because especially she was considered a new artist at that time, even though the legacy that followed her, um, she was so unbelievably busy. Like her schedule was so ridiculously packed on days off that we hardly ever saw her. And I know Dean can attest to this. Like her dancers and her crew, like that's her family on tour. So it's a very lonely thing when you get off stage and then you're rushed to this meeting and this interview and then this luncheon and then the record company and then you know what I mean? Like everywhere we went, she had all of those meetings to go to. You had to meet the label in that country. You had to meet with the interview or the magazines from that country. And so I kind of felt like when we did the Janet tour, there was a lot more, she had a lot more control of like, yeah, I'm not doing all of that. Like I need time. Like I think she, kind of understood like this is really taxing for me to do this all day and then try to get on stage and sing at night. So I think there was even though she was even bigger, right, and selling even more records, I think she had better control and management had better control of her daily schedule. And I think she also understood, like, I'm not letting this pass me by. Like, we're going to play Uno in between, in between the show and rehearsal and whatever. We're going to have popcorn. We're going to have movie nights. We're going to go out to a club. She's going to do stuff. And I just think it continuously, at least up till Velvet Rope when I was there, there was a lot more, we were getting older and we were going out. And plus we had, at that time, a little bit, with Michael and Rob and Shawnette and Gil even were like, they were the club kids. So they always were going out and going to new places. And sometimes, I would only kind of go with Jan. I would go because I'm like, I know she's going to cut out early. I need to cut out early. Like, I'm not staying here all night. I've never had it in me. So I kind of feel like, but then, the Velvet Rope had its own kind of blossoming. So it was like they were all younger than me, but, we were kind of all coming to this exploration of like what's going on in my life, who am I becoming, like kind of, if that makes any sense. Like you're just at a certain age where it's like you're starting to, then that's kind of what the whole Velvet Rope was about, right? Watering your garden, or how does that saying go? Yep. That you can't really take care of anybody else until you take care of yourself. So there's a lot of life lessons learned, I think, during that whole tour. So, and yet it was like the most fun we probably ever had on stage. So it was like this weird dichotomy of like still learning life and then getting to put it all out on the floor. And then also being able to dance with the same dancers. Again, you can attest to this, Dean. It is a different thing when you've got this camaraderie and you really become family. That it's just, you're traveling with your family, you're working with your family on your off days, even though the fans want to be with you. It's like, yeah, but we were working. I want to be with my family now on our off days. Like we want to go hang out together. So I forgot the initial question, but I do think that I never felt like she, and maybe you didn't mean it like this, but I never felt like she took these things as obligations as much as just a love for performing and a love what she had created and what we'd all created. And to be, again, being able to do this with family it's kind of priceless. So, but I've seen, I met her at 18 and I've seen the trajectory of her growth and her opening up, her womanhood, all of that. So yeah, that's my take. Dean?
I think it's so interesting because it's like I'm hearing you speak about your time with Janet, and then my physical experience of Janet is it's her as a mother. She's a mother now. She's got her baby, and it's um, juggling that. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's like, okay, I know that if I've got rehearsal with you, I'm losing you at 3 p.m. because you have to go and pick your baby up from school. It's like there's that's a whole new world that she didn't have to deal with before. So I think her life is just busy, her schedule is busy, and I'm sure at times can be very stressful. So I think for me, I think it's really trying to ensure that when she is on stage, it is fun for her, and that is also where it comes into play of having so much rehearsal time that by the time you get on stage, you don't have to think or worry. You can just go out and just enjoy performing and just having a good time. Because like you say, we are a family, we are a camaraderie, and we're a unit, and we're together. And we go out there and we know that we've all got each other's backs. Right. And yeah, and I think the fun part of it shouldn't be forgotten, because she is 52 years into her career, which is just unbelievable and such an incredible achievement. And I think she's earned the right to have fun on stage. It's like, don't get me wrong, she is a perfectionist and she wants to get it right and have a good show every night. Rightly so, we all do. But also I do try and encourage her just to, have fun, enjoy it. If one night you don't want to do that dance break, don't do it. Go and perform to that audience, like you're allowed to do that. It's your show. You are the artist, So it's a big, big thing for me, I think, is to, even steps wise, I want you to feel good doing the steps. And if you don't enjoy a certain step, tell me and we'll change it,
Right. Well, it's funny. You'll love this, Kelly, because Kelly's always like, have you talked to her lately? And she's always asking me questions. I said, I think this was the beginning of Together Again 2.0. And so I was like, oh, you're going back. I was texting going, I know you're going back out, because I was just trying to congratulate her and like, hope everything's great on this round. I was like, I don't know. I'm sure I was just like laid up, my back hurt or something. I was like, I don't know how you do this. Like, you're still doing it every night. And she wrote back, she's like, I will do this for as long as I possibly can. I'm having so much fun. And I was like, you know what? That is so amazing. And what a blessing.
I mean, incredible. And I think this is the other thing. People forget that she's nearly 60. She's 59 this year. And I don't know any other 59-year-old that can do what she is doing to the level that she is doing it. And it comes back to a conversation we had earlier. She is still doing a 2-hour show at a level that some of even the young artists couldn't even fathom doing, because they're not willing to put in the work. They don't have the discipline, and it really is a testament to who she is and what she can do. And I think people need to really be even more respectful of that, because it is incredible what she can do.
Absolutely.
Tina, any last question for Dean?
No, I just thank you for coming on and spending time with us. And it's just so lovely to get to know you. I do want to say one thing to him. There was something, were you posting stuff? I don't know if my timeline's right. I don't know if you were already working with her, but did you work out with her kind of like the way that I did back in the Rhythm Nation days? So you were, right? Because I remember I didn't know who you were, and I'd seen a couple clips on Instagram, and you guys had just said that you're just working things out. But there was a shift, and before all the trolls try to take this out of context, it has nothing to do with a like or dislike of what she had been doing, but there was a shift in her movement that I was really attracted to. I was like, oh, there's something different here. I really like this on her body. And I look at every artist like that. Like, do I like what that look, the feel? And there was just something to me that was different. And then I realized that you were in the picture, and I knew I was like, oh, I wanted to see what this trajectory would look like, because there was just something. And I think it also had to do with I just also noticed, I don't know what was going on in her life at that moment, but there was a freedom that I felt like I hadn't seen on her in a long time. And not from choreography, but just of enjoying kind of life and being in her body and being in the movement. And so, anyway, that was kind of my first introduction to you. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. There's something that I was gravitating towards your movement with her. So it's just really nice to finally meet you.
That is such a compliment from you. And I hold on to that very dearly because, you know, I love and respect you very much and have done for very many years. And, you know, you paved the way for all of us and you've created such iconic work that inspired all of us to dance, you know, and to be able to say that to your face is just, I'm very grateful for that. But thank you for your words because I think for me, everything comes from feeling and I want my steps, you know, there's choreographers that can just sit down and choreograph and just on a body. Like, I think that is so incredible, but I can't, like, I have to know how a step feels, you know? So I think what I can't speak for you, but I think the only thing I can connect it to is I think when me and Janet first started working together, everything for me, I wanted it to feel right and I wanted it to feel good. And I was always saying to her, if something doesn't feel right, tell me and we will change it. I just wanted to, you know, so, and just really try to just speak a lot of goodness and love into Janet and just really wanted her to see her for who she is, you know, because we're all human and we all have moments in life and we all have days where we don't see ourselves the way that we should. And, you know, we're very, very similar people. You know, we're only 10 days apart in our birthdays. We're both Tauruses. We have a lot of similar traits. And I think that's why we connect so much. But I think my point is that's really important to me is that how things feel and I want her to feel good. And I'm just glad that's coming out in the work. But I think more importantly, I thank you for that. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dean, before we let you go, just on behalf of the fans, I just want to thank you for coming into Janet's life because I also think that you've added like amazing elements to her and just I think a good vibe, like a good vibe. And so super happy to have you as part of the family, which you've obviously been for several years now. So on behalf of the fans, thank you for everything you're doing and for helping to keep her in such a good space.
So much. It really does. Thank you.
And last question for you. After the Vegas residency, is there anything that you want your fans to know, like what Dean is going to be working on next or where else we can see you? Obviously, I'm sure you'll be back with Janet, but we just want to make sure everybody knows what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now there's a possible documentary that's happening on Amazon. They've already done season 1. They've been greenlit for season 2. So I've got a follow-up meeting on that tomorrow, which I think could be really, really epic and really amazing. So there's possibly that. And then I'm kind of in development on a Broadway musical. So obviously, as we know, Broadway is a long road. It's a very trying road, but we've done the initial movement workshop and we've got our producers now on board. So that, I mean, and you know, that may not happen till next year, but that's kind of, they're the two things that I'm kind of keeping here whilst I do all my Janet stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. Dean, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been such a pleasure.
That is Dean Lee. Don't forget to check out his Instagram at DeanAnthLee for all of his information, all of the pictures, and of course, all the action that he's got going on with Janet and everything else. Hey, it's Kelly Alexander, and thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kelly Alexander Show, so you are the first in line for all the cool content coming your way.